Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's Essosafashion here, back with another tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how to cut and sew a very simple kaftan top with slits at the side and also a slit at the neckline. If that's what you're interested in, then do keep on watching. The measurement you're going to need for this is the shoulder measurement, the armhole measurement, the bust measurements, that's the bust points and the bust roundness. Then you're also going to need the blouse length as well as the length of the sleeve that you want, that's the sleeve length and also the sleeve roundness. So the material I'm using for this is a simple adire material, and I'm going to be using a yard of material for this style. So I'll be doing the cutting and sewing directly on the fabric, so please pay attention to what I'm going to do. The first thing you need to take note of is that I'm going to be cutting both the front and the back piece together because there isn't much difference. There will be no dart intake, no fitting whatsoever, so it's the same thing that will be for the front and for the back. So my fabric is folded into 4. The upper part of the fabric, all of the parts are closed, while all of the parts on the lower part of the fabric is opened, and this side will be the hem, and then one side is also on fold, so that folded edge will be the center back and the center front. Let's get right into the cutting and sewing process. The first thing I'm going to do is determine the length of the blouse I want to work with, and the length of the blouse I'm using for this tutorial is 29.5 inches. You can see that the first fabric is already hemmed, so it's that exact 29.5 I'm going to cut. However, for the fabric underneath, I'm going to add 1 inch extra. This means I'll be using a total of 30.5 inch for the other fabric underneath. Remember that anyone can be the front, anyone can be the back, because I'm cutting the exact same thing, so please keep that in mind. So I've determined the blouse length. I'm going to hem one, the other one is already hemmed already at the edge, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. The next thing I'm going to do is mark out the shoulder measurement. The shoulder I'm working with is 17 inches. 17 divided by 2 will give me 8.5 inches. So I went ahead to mark that out, and then from there I marked the armhole measurement plus 1 inch as the shoulder slant allowance. So if your armhole is 8, you'll be marking 9. If your armhole is 9, you'll be marking 10. So I just marked that at the edge of the fabric as well, so that I can connect a straight line. This is freehand that I'm doing here, so I didn't use ruler for this part. Also, note that for a kaftan top, the armhole won't be fitted like when you're sewing like a normal fitted top. So my advice is that whatever your actual armhole roundness is, add 1 inch to it, so that the armhole will be loose, because the shirt isn't going to be fitted on your body. So this means if your armhole is 7, you are going to add 1 inch to it to make the armhole free. So that's a total of 8 plus another 1 inch as the shoulder slant, okay, which means it's a total of 9 inches you're going to be marking as the armhole. So I'm just going to connect from the armhole point back to the shoulder line. After that, the next thing I'm going to do is mark the bust measurement. First things first, mark the bust point, and from the bust point, mark the bust roundness divided by 4. Note that whatever your bust roundness is, you must add at least 1 inch to it, so that the top will be free on your body. Whatever I have at the bust is what I'm going to take directly at the blouse length and connect this with a straight line. So this is why I said I'm cutting the exact same thing for the back and the front, back to the bust measurement. So you can add more than 1 inch, but this depends on how free you want it to be on your body. But at least 1 inch should be added so that you can get something free. So this technique is used for like a shift dress or a fitted dress or camisole top, so please keep that in mind, unless if you want it to be your exact body measurement, meaning you have to add a zip. And what is the zip doing with the kaftan top? So yeah, as you can see, I've gone ahead to connect everything. You can see the box shape here, and you can also see the armhole line clearly drawn out. So the next thing I want to do is mark out the neck measurement. For the front neckline, I'm going to be using 4x4, and for the back neckline, I'm going to be using 4x2. So I'm going to mark both the front neckline and the back neckline here, since the front and the back fabric is folded together. However, it's only the back part I'll be cutting out first, so that I won't end up having the same thing for the front and the back. So that's another thing to take note of for a kaftan top. Although depending on some styles, the neckline can be wide, but most of the time for a kaftan top, the neckline is usually very small. So you don't want something too wide at the front and too wide at the back. Okay, and the neckline is usually either round, V, or a boat neck. Square neck isn't really common, okay, but then again, fashion isn't restricted. So after marking that out, the next thing I'm going to do is mark out the shoulder slant. Remember that the shoulder slant allowance I added was 1 inch, so I went ahead to mark 1 inch at the armhole line and connected that back to the neck point. So over here, I noticed that I did not make allowance for the shoulder slant, so I went ahead to correct that and add back the 1 inch, then extend the armhole line to where it's meant to be. So next thing I'm going to do is divide that armhole line into 2 so that I can get the midpoint. From that midpoint, I will go in by 1/2 inch, which I have already done, and then use a straight line to connect from that midpoint back to the shoulder line. Then draw a curve from the chest line to meet with the midpoint. Like I said, this is a freehand, so that's why you're not really seeing all of the points exact, like when I use like a pattern paper to demonstrate this. So please pay attention to what I'm doing on the screen. So just like that, I've cut the armhole, I've drawn out the armhole already. Find the midpoint of the armhole line, go in by 1/2 inch, use a straight line to connect from the midpoint to the shoulder, and then draw a curve from the midpoint to meet with the chest line. So guys, what I'm doing now is adding seam allowance of 2 inches to the sides before I cut it out. So I'm going to mark 2 inch all round. This is completely up to you. Whatever seam allowance you want to add, you add, but at least 1/2 inch for joining. Okay, you can't cut exact without adding seam allowance. So I went ahead to mark out the seam allowance, and then I just used a straight ruler to connect it. This is actually pretty easy and straightforward because it's a very simple basic style, easy for beginners to follow. Okay, so now that I've marked out the seam allowance, the next thing that I'm going to do is cut this out. So while I'm cutting, I'll make sure that I add 1/2 inch seam allowance to the armhole area and the shoulder area as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out now. As you guys can see, it's only the back neckline of 4x2 that I cut out first, and then after separating the fabric, I will go ahead and cut out the front neckline. As for the allowance for the neckline area, I made sure to not cut directly on the line I marked. I cut 1/2 inch above it, so that I'll have 1/2 inch seam allowance for facing the neckline. Remember that the front neckline have a slit in front, so it's that slit I want to open up now. So I'm going to come to the neckline here and mark 3 inch at the center front, and now just simply slash down the middle of the top into 2 to meet with that 3 inch mark, and that's it for the slit. By the time I face it, or rather hem it, for those of you that don't understand, the slit is going to open up a bit more. So the next thing I want to do now is cut out the sleeve, And to do this, I first of all measured the armhole roundness so that it will be easy for me to do. This is the fabric piece I have left. You can see that I'm managing it, and I already have 2 pieces together. So first thing I'm going to do is to just mark a straight line from this top, and it is from here that I'm going to take all of my measurements from. First thing I'm going to do is mark out the cap sleeve measurement and draw a straight line. So you can see that it's 2 fabrics I'm working with. Then that armhole measurement I took, I'm going to divide it into 2. Whatever I have, I'm going to take the measurement slants from the cap sleeve line to meet with the starting line. Then I'll just mark it right here. After that, I'm going to use a straight line to connect the 2 points. So the next thing I'm going to do is find the midpoint of this slant line and mark it out. After finding the midpoint, I'll find the midpoint from this side and also find the midpoint for this side. So from here, I'm going to come down by 1/2 inch, and for the other side, I will come up by 1/2 inch as well. And this will serve as the basis for drawing the curve of the sleeve that it will fit into the armhole curve. After doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the sleeve roundness at the sleeve length line. So I don't want the sleeve to be too tight. Remember that you want to do something that is a bit free. So if the fitted sleeve roundness is usually like say 10 or 11, I suggest making it 12. So you just add 1 inch to it so that it will be a bit free on the body. So note that the length of the sleeve I'm working with also includes hemming allowance, and the hemming allowance I have for this is about 2 inch or 1.5 inch. This is because I want the hem at the sleeve to be a bit wide, like 1 inch wide or 1.25 inch wide after sewing. Just like I did for the top, I'm going to add 2 inch seam allowance and cut this out. When I'm cutting, I'll make sure that I'm leaving 1/2 inch seam allowance at this curved part for joining. So this is the sleeve right here already cut along with the top. So next thing that I want to do is cut out the facing for the neck. This is what I'm going to be using to hem the neck for both the front and the back. And to do this, you're just going to grab a piece of fabric and place it the way I did, and then mark out the neckline with a chalk on the main fabric. So you can see that the neckline for the back piece has been drawn out on this piece of fabric. And then what you want to do is determine how wide you want the facing to be. For me, I used 3 inch as the wideness. So I marked 3 inches from the neckline that is drawn all round, so I will have something equal. And then I will use chalk to connect all of this, then cut it out. So this is what the facing for the back looks like after I have cut it out. It will be placed this way and then stitched down here, turned back to the other side, and then the neck will look very neat. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same thing for the front. The fabric wasn't long enough, so I went ahead to add to it. So as you can see, I have placed the fabric underneath the top part for the front, and I just decided to use my scissors to cut it out exact instead of using chalk to mark it out first. So I just cut out the neckline area and then opened up the slash for the middle, and that was everything for the front. For the front, I'm not going to be shaping in the sides. I'm just going to cut off a little bit of excess at the shoulder area and then just use a straight line to connect. So the facing for the front is just the neckline that is shapen out, and the rest is just a square. I feel like it's easier this way, but you can definitely shaping this part as well, you know, coming by 3" all round the neckline to give it a better fitting, or if that's your preference. But I prefer to just use this box design instead, so it will be easier for me to work with. But I'm just showing you guys here the alternative. If you want to shaping it out, this is how it would look like. You use your chalk to mark it all around. Can you see that? So this is how the facing would look like if I wasn't doing the square shape, but I'm going with the square, so I just did that for you guys to see. I'll go ahead and cut this out just like I did for the back, and then we'll move on to the next phase, which is sewing everything together. So to hem the neckline with this, you're going to face right sides together and pin it down, making sure that the neck match. Okay, and then you will stitch using 1/2 inch seam allowance. Remember, you're still going to hem the rough edges of the facing, but I didn't film that part, but keep that in mind. You can't leave the edges looking rough. So you can see that I'm pinning all of the neckline area, and then I'm just going to go ahead and stitch this down. This is what it is looking like after I have stitched down the facing to the neckline for the front. So what I'm going to do is turn this out and then iron the neckline so that it stays flat. So this side, you have to make sure that you notch it so that it will relax properly after turning out the right sides. So just like I did for the front, I'm going to do the same thing for the back. Don't forget to hem the edges. I'm just showing you guys so that you don't make the mistake of leaving the rough edge the way it is. So guys, I'm going to face right sides together just like I did for the front, and then stitch it down. After sewing it, you want to make sure that you notch the neckline so that it will relax properly. So you can see that I didn't notch it, and when I tried to turn it out, this is what it was looking like. It wasn't well relaxed. So I went ahead to notch around the neckline so that it will relax properly. Now this is looking better even though I haven't ironed it yet. Next thing I want to work on is the sleeve. I want to hem the edge and join the sides. So to hem the sleeve, I'll just fold in 1/2 inch first. After folding in 1/2 inch, then I'll fold in again, but this time I'll be folding in by about 1 inch, and then I'll pin this down. So this way the hem of the sleeve will be wider. After doing that, I'll stitch down on the edge of the folded hem. So this is what it is looking like after sewing this down. You can see it's looking very neat. The next thing I want to do is join the sides using the 2" seam allowance that I added. So guys, this is what it is looking like. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same thing for the other sleeve. So guys, next thing to do is to join the back and the front of this top together. So I'm pinning the shoulder area first. Note this isn't lined, so you can't do inseam finishing for joining the shoulder. So I'm just going to pin this together, making sure that the points match. And then I'll use 1/2 inch seam allowance to hold the shoulders together. As for the sides, I'll be using the 2" seam allowance which I added to do that. Then I'll also go ahead and fold in the hem of the top. So the next thing I want to do is attach the sleeve to the top. To do this, I'm going to turn the wrong side of the top and the right side of the sleeve. Then I will insert the sleeve inside the armhole area of the top in such a way that the curve will match. I'm just going to use a pin to secure this so it will be easier for me to stitch. After pinning this together, I'll go ahead and stitch this down using the 1/2 inch seam allowance that was added. After attaching the armhole, the next thing I want to do is open up the side slits for this shirt. To be able to stitch down the slits, you have to make sure that you have opened up about 5 to 6 inches from the side of your blouse on both sides, but that is completely up to you. You can make it 7 or 8 inches, but I recommend using at least 5 inches. What I'm going to do is come up by 1/2 inch, and then on both sides from the separation I will mark 1 inch on both sides. So I'm marking 1 inch on the top and 1 inch on the two sides, and I'm just using chalk to mark it out so it will be very easy to stitch. So after using the chalk to mark out the lines, I will open it up so that I can stitch this down. So when I'm stitching, I will start from the hem of the top. I'll stitch all the way to meet with the line and then stitch the top area. After that, I'll move on to sew the other side, making sure that I top stitch the end so it doesn't unravel later. So this is everything on how to do the slits. I'll repeat the same thing for the other side. The reason for doing this is to make sure the slit stays open, and it also gives a more neat and professional look to the top. Also, if you use a contrast thread, a contrast colored thread, it will give a kind of design to the top. So this is everything on how to sew a kaftan top. This is like the most basic way to make a kaftan top. There are definitely more advanced and more beautiful designs out there, but I just had to put out the basic ones for beginners. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section and I'll make sure to respond. Thank you guys so much for watching this far, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.